The summer heat was beating down hard on the old highway as Lisa pulled her dusty Honda into the gravel parking lot of Murphy's roadside diner. She had been driving for over 4 hours straight, and her back was killing her. But more importantly, she needed to check on her 3 passengers in the back seat. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a row of shiny motorcycles lined up near the front entrance. Big, expensive-looking bikes that probably cost more than Lisa made in 6 months. At the animal clinic where she worked, she could already see their owners lounging in the shade by the diner's front porch, cold drinks in their hands, leather jackets draped over the wooden railings despite the heat. Lisa turned off the engine and immediately heard the soft whimpering from the back seat. I know, she said gently, turning around to look at the 3 travel crates secured with seatbelts. We're almost there, guys. Just need to stretch our legs and get some water. She had volunteered to drive these 3 dogs to their new home at a special sanctuary about 2 hours north. It wasn't exactly how she planned to spend her Saturday, but when Dr. Peterson at the clinic asked for someone to make the trip, Lisa couldn't say no. These dogs had been through enough already, as you. She stepped out of the car. The heat hit her like a wall. Her work uniform was already sticking to her back, and she could feel sweat forming on her forehead. She wasn't exactly dressed for a road trip, just her regular clinic scrubs and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she probably looked as tired as she felt. That's when she heard the first snicker. Well, what do we have here? The voice came from the group of bikers. There were about 6 of them, all big guys with arms covered in tattoos, sunglasses, and that confident swagger that comes with riding in a pack. Lisa tried to ignore them as she opened the back door of her car. She had dealt with enough difficult people at the clinic to know that sometimes it was best to just mind your own business and move on. But as she started checking on the first dog crate, the comments got louder. Hey, look at this, another voice called out. It's the crazy dog, lady. How many mutts you got in there, sweetheart? Lisa's jaw tightened, but she kept her focus on the dogs. The German Shepherd in the first crate, Rex, was panting heavily. His back leg was in a special brace, and she could see he was uncomfortable from the long drive. In the second crate, the little beagle named Stella was curled up in the corner. Her cloudy, sightless eyes made her look smaller and more fragile than she actually was. And in the third crate, Bruno the pit bull mix was trying to stand up, his powerful frame balanced awkwardly on 3 legs. Oh man, this is rich, one of the bikers said, walking closer. She's running some kind of mobile animal shelter. Look at that collection of broken-down mutts. The leader of the group, a man with a gray beard and arms like tree trunks, stood up from his chair and adjusted his sunglasses. Probably picked them up from the pound. Can't even put them out of their misery properly. Lisa felt her face getting hot, and not just from the sun. She had heard these kinds of comments before, but it never got easier. People looked at these dogs and saw damaged goods, unwanted animals, problems that needed to be disposed of. They had no idea what these dogs had been through, what they had sacrificed, what they were still capable of. Need some help with your zoo there, lady? Another biker called out, and the whole group burst into laughter. Maybe we should call animal control. Make sure you got the right permits for hauling around all that damaged merchandise. One of the younger bikers started making exaggerated barking sounds, which got the others laughing even harder. Woof! Woof! Here, crippled doggy! Lisa's hands were shaking now, partly from anger and partly from the stress of the situation. She knew she needed to get the dogs out for a bathroom break. They had been in those crates for hours, but with this crowd watching and making jokes, she wasn't sure if it was safe. She took a deep breath and decided to focus on what mattered. These dogs trusted her, and they needed her help. What a bunch of strangers thought about it didn't matter. She started with Rex's crate, speaking in the calm, gentle voice she used at the clinic. Come on, boy, let's get you out of there. The German Shepherd looked up at her with intelligent brown eyes that seemed to understand everything that was happening around them. As she carefully helped Rex out of the crate, supporting his injured leg, the biker's commentary continued. Look at that thing hobble around. What's the point of keeping a dog that can't even walk right? Probably costs more to feed that thing than it's worth. I bet she's one of those bleeding heart types who thinks every stray mutt deserves a second chance. Lisa gritted her teeth and moved to the second crate. Stella, the blind beagle, was already standing and wagging her tail. Despite her lack of sight, she always seemed to know when Lisa was near. Her hearing was incredibly sharp, and she could identify people by their footsteps and breathing patterns. "Oh great, this one's blind too," the gray-bearded leader said. "Lady, you sure know how to pick 'em. What's next, a three-legged cat?" As if on cue, Lisa opened the third crate, and Bruno emerged, his muscular frame moving with surprising grace despite his missing front leg. The pit bull mix had learned to balance perfectly, and his tail was wagging as he looked around, taking in all the new sights and smells. The bikers erupted in laughter again. "There it is, the three-legged wonder. This is better than a circus sideshow. Hey lady, you should charge admission. Come see the amazing collection of defective dogs." Lisa felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of these people. She had heard it all before. At the clinic, at the grocery store, walking down the street. People saw these dogs as broken, worthless, a waste of time and money. What they didn't see was Rex's unwavering loyalty and intelligence. They didn't see how Stella could navigate any space perfectly once she learned the layout, or how her other senses had become incredibly sharp to compensate for her blindness. They didn't see Bruno's gentle nature with children, or how he had learned to do things that four-legged dogs couldn't even do. But right now, standing in this parking lot with the sun beating down and these strangers laughing at her and the dogs she cared about, Lisa felt completely alone. She was just trying to help these animals get to a place where they would be appreciated and cared for properly. She wasn't asking for praise or recognition. She just wanted to do the right thing. The dogs seemed to sense her distress. Rex moved closer to her side, his warm body providing comfort. Stella sat down next to her foot, her head tilted in that way that showed she was listening intently to everything around them. And Bruno, despite his own challenges, positioned himself where he could keep an eye on all the strangers while staying close to Lisa. Little did anyone know that in just a few minutes, everything would change. The people laughing and making jokes had no idea what they were really looking at. They saw 3 damaged animals and a naive young woman. They had no idea they were in the presence of heroes. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Lisa could feel the weight of 6 pairs of eyes on her as she tried to help her 3 companions stretch their legs and take care of their needs. The bikers had nothing better to do than stand around and make fun of her and the dogs, and they seemed to be enjoying every second of it. "Come on, Rex," Lisa said softly, guiding the German shepherd to a small patch of grass near the edge of the parking lot. His injured leg made walking difficult, but he moved with dignity, ignoring the comments from the crowd behind them. "Look, at its struggle," one of the bikers called out. "That thing's suffering. Someone should put it out of its misery." Lisa's hands clenched into fists, but she kept her voice calm for Rex's sake. Dogs could sense tension and stress, and the last thing she wanted was to make this harder for them than it already was. The gray-bearded leader, who seemed to be the ringleader of this group, took a long drink from his beer bottle and shook his head. "I tell you what, lady, I've seen some bleeding hearts in my time, but this takes the cake. You're wasting your time and money on animals that should have been put down years ago." "That's not your decision to make," Lisa finally spoke up, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "Oh, she talks," another biker laughed. "Tell me, sweetheart, how much money do you throw away on vet bills for these lost causes? I bet you could buy a decent car with what you spend keeping these things alive." Lisa helped Rex back toward the car and then moved to Stella, the blind beagle. The little dog's tail was wagging, but Lisa could see she was nervous. Stella's ears were constantly moving, picking up every sound, every voice, every footstep around them. "This one's even worse," the youngest biker said, pointing at Stella. "At least the other one can see where it's going. This thing's completely useless. Can't even find its own food bowl, I bet." What he didn't know was that Stella had an incredible ability to memorize spaces and navigate them perfectly. At the clinic, she could find her way around the entire building, locate specific rooms, and even bring Lisa tools when she needed them. Her hearing was so sharp that she could identify different people by their heartbeat and breathing patterns. But to these strangers, she was just a broken animal taking up space in the world. Lisa gently guided Stella to the grass, staying close, to provide comfort and security. The little dog did her business quickly, clearly wanting to get back to the safety of the car as soon as possible. "You know what I think?" the gray-bearded man continued, warming up to his audience. "I think this whole thing is some kind of scam. She probably goes around collecting these damaged animals, gets people to feel sorry for her, and then asks for donations. It's a racket." "That's not true," Lisa said, her voice getting stronger. "These dogs are going to a sanctuary where they'll be properly cared for." "Sanctuary?" Another biker laughed. "You mean some farm where they'll sit around eating expensive food and taking up space until they die? What a waste." The comments were getting more cruel, but Lisa noticed something else. A few people had come out of the diner to see what all the commotion was about. An elderly couple stood by the door, watching with concerned expressions. A waitress was wiping her hands on her apron, clearly uncomfortable with what she was seeing. Now it was Bruno's turn. The three-legged pit bull mix needed the most help getting around, but he never complained. Lisa had seen him climb stairs, jump over obstacles, and even play fetch with other dogs at the clinic. His missing leg hadn't slowed him down one bit. But, as she helped him out of the car, the biker's comments reached a new low. "Now that's just sad," the leader said, shaking his head in mock sympathy. "Look at that poor thing trying to walk. You're being cruel keeping it alive like that." "Pit bulls are dangerous enough with 4 legs," another one added. "This one's probably twice as unpredictable because it's frustrated and in pain all the time." Lisa's temper finally snapped. "He's not in pain, and he's not dangerous. Bruno is one of the gentlest dogs I've ever met. He loves children. He's patient with other animals, and he's incredibly smart." "Yeah, right," the youngest biker scoffed. "Pit bulls are killers. That's what they're bred for. And a damaged pit bull is even worse. You're a ticking time bomb waiting to happen, lady." The elderly man by the diner door stepped forward. "Now hold on there," he said in a shaky voice. "There's no need to be so harsh. The young lady is just trying to help some animals." "Stay out of this, old man," the gray-bearded leader snapped. "This is between us and the dog collector here." Lisa felt her heart sink. Now these bullies were being rude to an innocent bystander who was just trying to help. She looked around the parking lot and realized how alone she really was. 6 big, intimidating bikers against her, 3 disabled dogs, and an elderly man who was probably in his 70s. "I think we should go," she said quietly to the old man. "Thank you for trying to help, but I don't want anyone to get hurt." "See?" the leader said with satisfaction. "Even she knows when she's outnumbered. Smart girl." But Bruno had other ideas. The 3-legged pit bull had been watching the entire exchange with intelligent eyes. He could sense Lisa's distress, and he didn't like it one bit. He moved closer to her, positioning himself between her and the group of bikers. "Oh, look," one of them laughed. "The crippled guard dog thinks it's tough. What's it gonna do, fall over on us?" Bruno didn't growl or show any signs of aggression. He simply stood there, calm and alert, his body language saying clearly that he was prepared to protect Lisa if necessary. "That dog's got more courage than all of you put together," the elderly man said, his voice getting stronger. "Shame on you for picking on a young woman who's just trying to do something good in this world." The waitress from the diner finally spoke up. "Hey, maybe you guys should leave her alone. She's not bothering anybody." But the bikers were enjoying themselves too much to stop now. They had an audience, they had someone to pick on, and they were showing off for each other. "Tell you what," the leader said, finishing his beer and tossing the empty bottle into a trash can. "We'll make you a deal. Leave those 3 walking disasters here with us, and we'll put them out of their misery for free. Consider it a public service." The crowd around them had grown. More people had come out of the diner, and a few cars had pulled into the parking lot. Lisa could see that most of them looked uncomfortable with what was happening, but nobody else seemed willing to get involved. She looked down at Rex, Stella, and Bruno, 3 dogs who had been through more than most people could imagine, 3 dogs who deserved respect and kindness, not mockery and threats. 3 dogs who trusted her to keep them safe. What none of these people knew was that they were looking at heroes, not broken animals, not charity cases, not problems to be solved. They were looking at three individuals who had served their country, who had saved lives, who had sacrificed their own well-being for the safety of others. But their service had been forgotten. Their sacrifices had been ignored. And now they were being treated like unwanted garbage by people who had no idea what real courage looked like. Lisa took a deep breath and made a decision. She wasn't going to let these bullies win. She wasn't going to let them humiliate her or her dogs any longer. She was going to get them safely to the car and get out of here no matter what it took. She had no idea that in just a few minutes, everything would change. The very people who were laughing at her dogs would soon be looking at them with completely different eyes. Lisa was just about to load the dogs back into the car when she heard a commotion from inside the diner. Through the large windows, she could see people moving around frantically, chairs scraping against the floor, and someone waving their arms. Then came the scream, "Help! Someone help! He's not breathing!" The sound cut through the afternoon air like a knife. All the laughter and cruel comments from the bikers stopped instantly. Everyone in the parking lot turned toward the diner, where the elderly woman who had been sitting with her husband was now standing in the doorway, her face pale with terror. "Please, my husband. Something's wrong with him." Lisa's heart jumped. She had seen enough medical emergencies at the animal clinic to recognize the panic in the woman's voice. This wasn't just someone feeling a little sick. This was serious. The bikers looked at each other, suddenly unsure. A few people started moving toward the diner, but nobody seemed to know what to do. The waitress was fumbling with her phone, probably trying to call 911. Lisa started toward the diner entrance, but she only made it a few steps before she heard a loud crash from inside. Through the window, she could see that the elderly man had collapsed completely. His chair overturned, his body sprawled on the floor. "Oh my God, he's having a heart attack," someone shouted from inside. That's when everything changed. Before Lisa could even process what was happening, Rex was moving. The German shepherd who had been struggling to walk just minutes before was suddenly alert and focused. His injured leg didn't seem to matter anymore as he limped quickly toward the diner entrance. "Rex, no!" Lisa called out. But the dog wasn't listening. He had a job to do. At the same time, Stella's head snapped up. The blind beagle's ears were rotating like radar dishes, picking up sounds that human ears couldn't detect. She began moving toward the diner too, her nose working overtime, her small body tense with purpose. And Bruno, the three-legged pit bull that the bikers had been making fun of just moments before, was already in motion. Despite his missing leg, he was moving with incredible speed and precision toward Lisa's car. "What the hell?" one of the bikers muttered, watching the dogs transform before their eyes. Lisa ran after Rex, but the German shepherd was already at the diner door. Instead of barging in like a normal dog might, he positioned himself at the entrance and began what looked like crowd control. People were trying to rush in and out, some wanting to help, others wanting to see what was happening, but Rex was somehow managing the flow of traffic. He would let one person pass, then block the next, then allow another through. It was like he was thinking, making decisions about who should be allowed near the emergency and who should stay back. How is he doing that? The gray-bearded biker leader asked, his voice completely different from before. Inside the diner, the elderly man was on the floor, his skin turning a frightening shade of blue. His wife was kneeling beside him, tears streaming down her face. "Harold, please don't leave me," she was saying over and over. Lisa pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the man. She had basic first aid training from her work at the animal clinic, but this was beyond anything she had dealt with before. She checked for a pulse and found it weak and irregular. "Did someone call 911? She asked. "Yes, but they said it'll be at least 10 minutes, the waitress replied, her voice shaking. 10 minutes might be too long. Lisa knew that with a heart attack, every second counted. She was about to start CPR when she noticed something incredible. Stella had somehow made her way through the crowd and was now sitting right next to the fallen man. The blind beagle was perfectly still, her head tilted at a specific angle, her breathing controlled and focused. She was listening to something. But what? Then Lisa realized what was happening. Stella was monitoring the man's heartbeat and breathing. Her exceptional hearing was picking up the subtle changes in his vital, signs that humans couldn't detect. "His breathing is getting worse," Lisa said. And at that exact moment, Stella made a small whining sound, like she was confirming what Lisa had said. The crowd around them was growing, but somehow Rex was still managing to keep things organized. He had positioned himself so that there was enough room for people to help, but not so much that the area became chaotic. That's when Bruno arrived. The three-legged pit bull came through the crowd carrying something in his mouth. Lisa looked closer and her jaw dropped. It was her emergency first aid kit from the car, the one she always carried because of her work with animals. "How did he know to get that?" someone whispered. Bruno carefully placed the kit next to Lisa, and then did something even more remarkable. He positioned himself near the diner's entrance and began making a specific series of movements, sitting, standing, and moving in a pattern that seemed random, but clearly wasn't. "What's he doing?" the waitress asked. Lisa was too focused on the emergency to answer, but she grabbed the first aid kit and began checking the man's vitals more carefully. His pulse was definitely getting weaker, and his breathing was becoming more labored. She was about to start chest compressions when she heard sirens in the distance, but they sounded far away, probably still several minutes out. That's when she noticed something else incredible. Bruno wasn't just moving randomly by the entrance. He was creating a clear path from the parking lot to where the emergency was happening. Every time someone tried to park in the wrong spot or stand in the wrong place, Bruno would position himself to guide them elsewhere. It was like he was preparing a route for the paramedics. "I don't believe what I'm seeing," the gray-bearded biker said. He had followed the crowd into the diner and was now standing in the back, watching everything with wide eyes. Rex was still managing the crowd, but now Lisa could see that his positioning wasn't random either. He was keeping people at exactly the right distance, close enough to help if needed, but far enough back that they weren't interfering with the emergency response. And Stella was providing a constant stream of information through her body language. When the man's breathing became more regular, she would relax slightly. When it got worse, she would tense up and make soft sounds that somehow Lisa was beginning to understand. "His color's getting a little better," Lisa announced, and sure enough, Stella's tail gave a small wag, like she agreed with the assessment. The sirens were getting louder now, and Bruno's behavior became even more focused. He moved to the window and began looking out toward the parking lot, his body language suggesting he was watching for something specific. "The ambulance is here!" someone shouted from outside. Bruno immediately moved to the door and began his guiding behavior again. But this time it was clear he was directing the paramedics to the exact right spot. 2 paramedics rushed in with their equipment, and Bruno guided them through the crowd with incredible precision. They didn't even have to ask where the patient was. The three-legged dog led them directly to where they needed to be. As the paramedics took over, Rex moved back to give them room, but he maintained his position where he could still monitor the situation. Stella repositioned herself where she could continue to track the man's vital signs, and Bruno made sure the path to the ambulance stayed clear. The lead paramedic, a woman in her 40s, looked up from her patient and noticed the 3 dogs for the first time. "Where did these dogs come from?" she asked. "They're mine," Lisa said, still in shock at what she had just witnessed. The paramedic looked at Rex, then at Stella, then at Bruno. Her expression changed from confusion to recognition to amazement. "Ma'am," she said slowly, "I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what these dogs just did. They organized this entire scene before we even got here. The bikers who had been making fun of the dogs just minutes before were now standing in stunned silence, watching as the paramedics worked to stabilize the elderly man. The same animals they had called worthless and broken had just coordinated an emergency response better than most humans could have done. "I don't understand," one of the younger bikers said quietly. "How did they know what to do?" Lisa looked at her 3 companions, Rex maintaining his protective stance, Stella continuing to monitor the patient, and Bruno ensuring the path to the ambulance stayed clear. She was beginning to realize that there was much more to these dogs than she had ever imagined. The elderly man's color was returning to normal, and his breathing was becoming more stable. The paramedics were getting ready to transport him to the hospital, and it looked like he was going to make it. "You saved his life," the man's wife said to Lisa, tears still streaming down her face. But Lisa was looking at Rex, Stella, and Bruno. She had a feeling that she wasn't the one who had saved anyone. These 3 dogs had just demonstrated skills and training that went far beyond anything she had ever seen. Who were they really? And where had they learned to do what they had just done? As the paramedics loaded Harold onto the stretcher, his wife clutched Lisa's hand with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You and your dog saved my husband's life." The crowd was slowly dispersing, but the bikers remained frozen, in place, staring at Rex, Stella, and Bruno with expressions of complete disbelief. The same dogs they had been mocking just 20 minutes earlier had just coordinated an emergency response that would have impressed professional first responders. The gray-bearded leader of the bikers stepped forward, his sunglasses now pushed up on his forehead, revealing weathered eyes that had seen more than their share of life. "Ma'am," he said to Lisa, his voice completely different from before, "I need to ask you something. Where did you get these dogs?" Lisa was still shaken by what had just happened. "They're from the rescue organization where I work. They were being transferred to a sanctuary." "That's not what I mean," the man pressed. "I mean, where did they come from originally? Who trained them?" Before Lisa could answer, the female paramedic who had been working on Harold approached them. She was looking at the 3 dogs with a mixture of amazement and recognition. "Excuse me," she said to Lisa, "but I have to ask, are these military working dogs?" Lisa blinked in confusion. "Military dogs? No, they're just rescue animals. They've been living at our clinic for the past few months." The paramedic knelt down next to Rex, who was still maintaining his alert posture. She looked at his stance, his bearing, the way he held himself despite his injured leg. "This is definitely military bearing," she said. "And what they just did, that wasn't random. That was trained behavior." The gray-bearded biker was nodding slowly. "I thought so. The way they moved, the way they organized everything. That's not something you see in regular dogs." "I'm sorry," Lisa said, feeling more confused by the minute. "I don't understand what you're talking about. These are just rescue dogs." One of the younger bikers, who had been quiet since the emergency began, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I worked with military dogs over there. What your dogs just did, that's exactly how our K9 units operated during emergencies." Lisa looked down at Rex, who was now sitting calmly beside her, but still scanning the area with professional alertness. "But that's impossible." Rex was found on the streets with a broken leg. The vet said he was probably hit by a car. "That injury," the paramedic said, pointing to Rex's leg brace, "that's not from a car accident. I've seen injuries like that before. That's blast trauma, probably from an explosion." The crowd that had gathered was listening intently now. Everyone wanted to understand what they had just witnessed. The gray-bearded biker knelt down next to Stella, who was still positioned where she could monitor the area where Harold had been lying. "And this little one," he said softly. "Her blindness, that's not from birth or disease. Look at the scarring around her eyes." Lisa looked more closely at Stella than she ever had before. There were indeed faint scars around the beagle's eyes that she had never really noticed. "Chemical burns," the paramedic said grimly. "I'd bet money on it. Probably from a lab explosion or chemical attack." "But how do you know all this?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The gray-bearded man stood up and pulled off his leather jacket. Underneath, he was wearing a t-shirt with military insignia. "Because 20 years ago I was a Marine, and 15 years ago I worked with K9 units in Iraq." He looked at Bruno, who was now sitting at attention near the diner entrance. "And I've never seen a dog lose a leg and maintain that kind of balance and coordination unless they were trained to adapt to it." Lisa's world was starting to spin. "You're saying these dogs were in the military?" "Not just in the military," the younger biker said. "These dogs were elite. What we just saw, that was search and rescue coordination, crowd control, and emergency response all rolled into one. These aren't just former military dogs. These are retired heroes. The female paramedic was examining Bruno now, who allowed her to look at his missing leg without any resistance. "This amputation is surgical, not traumatic," she said. "This dog received proper medical care from people who knew what they were doing. And look at his muscle development. He's been doing physical therapy." Lisa felt like she was in a dream. "But why didn't anyone tell me?" "The people at the clinic, the rescue organization. Nobody said anything about them being military dogs. Sometimes that information gets lost in the system," the gray-bearded biker explained. "When military dogs retire, especially ones who are injured, they often end up in the regular rescue network. The paperwork gets mixed up, the history gets forgotten. Or sometimes," the paramedic added, "the information is kept quiet on purpose. Some of these dogs worked on classified missions. Their service records might be sealed." One of the other bikers, who had been silent throughout the entire incident, finally spoke up. "I owe you an apology," he said to Lisa. "We all do. We were making fun of heroes and we didn't even know it." Lisa looked at her three companions with completely new eyes. Rex, still maintaining his professional alertness despite his injury. Stella, whose blindness hadn't stopped her from providing crucial assistance during the emergency. And Bruno, whose missing leg hadn't slowed him down for even a second when lives were on the line. "How many lives do you think they saved during their service?" the younger biker asked quietly. "Probably more than we'll ever know," the gray-bearded man replied. "Search and rescue dogs, bomb detection dogs, patrol dogs, they all save lives every single day. And when they get injured doing it, they often get forgotten." The paramedic was packing up her equipment, but she paused to look at the dogs one more time. "You know what the most amazing part is?" she said. "Even retired, even injured, even forgotten. When they heard someone in trouble, they immediately went back to work. That's the kind of dedication and training that never goes away." Lisa knelt down and put her arms around all three dogs. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to them. "I didn't know. I should have known." Rex leaned into her embrace, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand that she was finally beginning to see them for who they really were. Stella's tail wagged gently, and Bruno moved closer to be part of the group hug. "Don't apologize," the gray-bearded biker said. "You've been taking care of them. You've been giving them the respect and love they deserve. That's more than a lot of people do." The crowd was starting to break up, but several people came over to Lisa before leaving. An elderly woman thanked her and gently petted each dog. A young father lifted his son up so the boy could say thank you to the hero dogs. Even the waitress from the diner came out with 3 hamburger patties as a special treat. "It's on the house," she said, "for the heroes." As Lisa watched people showing respect and gratitude to Rex, Stella, and Bruno, she realized that this was probably the first time in years that these dogs had been recognized for what they truly were. Not broken animals or charity cases, but veterans who had served their country with honor and courage. The gray-bearded biker pulled out his phone and showed Lisa a photo. It was him in military uniform, standing next to a German shepherd that looked remarkably similar to Rex. "That was my partner, Duke," he said. "He saved my life 3 times during my deployment. When he retired, I wanted to adopt him, but the paperwork got messed up and I lost track of him." He looked at Rex with deep respect. "Dogs like these, they don't forget their training. They don't forget their duty. Even when the world forgets about them." Lisa felt tears starting to form in her eyes. "What should I do now? Should I try to find out more about their history?" "That's up to you," the paramedic said. "But I'll tell you this much. Whatever you decide, these dogs deserve to be remembered as the heroes they are." As the ambulance pulled away with Harold stable and conscious, Lisa realized that this day had changed everything. She had started the morning thinking she was just helping 3 disabled rescue dogs get to a sanctuary. Now she knew she was in the presence of genuine heroes who had sacrificed everything for others. The question was, what was she going to do with this knowledge? 3 weeks later, Lisa received a phone call that would change her life forever. It was Harold's wife, Dorothy, calling from the hospital. Lisa, dear, Harold's doing much better. The doctor said if you and your dogs hadn't acted so quickly, he wouldn't have made it. Dorothy's voice was shaky with emotion. But that's not why I'm calling. Harold remembered something important, and we think you need to know. Lisa put down the paperwork she was filing at the animal clinic and gave Dorothy her full attention. What is it? Harold was in the Army for 30 years. He worked with military dogs during his last deployment in 2010. When he was conscious in the ambulance, he kept talking about your dogs. He said he recognized their behavior. Said they moved exactly like the war dogs he worked with overseas. Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. Ever since that day at the diner, she had been trying to find out more about Rex, Stella, and Bruno's past. But the paperwork trail had gone cold. The rescue organization had limited information, and military records were difficult to access. Harold wants to meet with you, Dorothy continued. He thinks he might be able to help you find out where they came from. 2 days later, Lisa found herself sitting in Harold's hospital room with Rex lying calmly at her feet. Harold was propped up in bed, looking much better than he had on that terrifying day at the diner. This is definitely a military working dog, Harold said, gently stroking Rex's head. Look at his posture, his alertness, even resting he's scanning the room for threats. Harold's eyes grew misty. I worked with dogs just like him in Afghanistan. They saved more lives than most people will ever know. Harold made some phone calls to his old military contacts, and within a week, Lisa had answers. Rex had served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a bomb detection dog. He had found over 40 explosive devices, saving countless lives. His leg had been injured when he stepped on a hidden IED while leading a patrol away from danger. Stella had been a drug detection dog who later specialized in search and rescue. She had lost her sight in a chemical explosion while investigating a suspected drug lab. Even after her injury, she had continued to serve, using her incredible hearing and scent abilities to locate missing persons. Bruno had been an elite patrol dog who had served with Marine units in some of the most dangerous areas of Iraq. He had lost his leg protecting his handler from an attack, throwing himself between the Marine and an explosive device. All 3 dogs had received medals for their service. All 3 had saved human lives, and all 3 had been quietly retired when their injuries made active duty impossible. But the most surprising discovery came when Harold's contacts revealed something amazing. The 3 dogs hadn't just served. They had served together as part of a special K9 unit that specialized in emergency response and disaster relief. They're a team, Harold explained to Lisa over the phone. That's why they worked so perfectly together at the diner. They've been trained to coordinate their abilities for exactly that kind of situation. Word of the dog's true identity spread quickly through the local community. The story of 3 retired war heroes saving a man's life touched everyone who heard it. The gray-bearded biker, whose name turned out to be Frank, was the first to step up. He organized his riding group to start a fundraising campaign for the sanctuary where the dogs were supposed to go. But he had a different idea. These dogs shouldn't be hidden away at some sanctuary, Frank told Lisa when he visited the clinic. They should be honored. They should be remembered. Frank and his biker friends, many of whom were veterans themselves, raised enough money to create a special program. Instead of going to a quiet sanctuary, Rex, Stella, and Bruno would become therapy dogs, visiting schools, hospitals, and veteran centers to share their story and provide comfort to others. The first school visit was incredible. Lisa brought all 3 dogs to Jefferson Elementary, where they met with students learning about heroes and service. The children were amazed when they learned that the broken dogs they were looking at were actually decorated war veterans. So, Rex found bombs and saved people? Asked a 7-year-old girl named Katie. That's right, Lisa explained. Even though his leg was hurt, he kept working to keep soldiers safe. And Stella could still help people even though she couldn't see? She used her other senses to find people who were lost or in trouble, Lisa said, watching as Stella calmly let the children pet her. That's so cool, Katie said. They're like superhero dogs. The visit to the Veterans Hospital was even more emotional. When Rex, Stella, and Bruno walked into the ward where wounded veterans were recovering, the room fell silent. These young men and women, many dealing with their own injuries and disabilities, looked at the three dogs with immediate understanding. A young soldier named Tommy, who had lost both legs in an explosion, wheeled his chair over to Bruno. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "I heard you're missing a leg too." Bruno moved closer to Tommy's wheelchair, and the young veteran gently scratched behind the dog's ears. "People keep telling me I'm broken," Tommy said quietly. "But you're not broken, are you? You're still a hero." As if he understood every word, Bruno placed his head on Tommy's lap and looked up at him with calm, intelligent eyes. "That's right," said an older veteran from across the room. "We're not broken. We're just different. And different doesn't mean less than." The room erupted in agreement from the other patients. Lisa watched as Rex moved from bed to bed, somehow knowing exactly which patients needed comfort. Stella positioned herself next to a veteran who was struggling with anxiety, her calming presence helping him relax for the first time in weeks. Frank and his biker group didn't stop with fundraising. They organized an annual event called Heroes on Wheels, where motorcycle riders from across the state would come together to honor military working dogs and their handlers. The first event raised over $50,000 for organizations that help retired military animals. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came 6 months later, when Lisa received a call from the Department of Defense. They wanted to present Rex, Stella, and Bruno with a special ceremony recognizing their service. The ceremony was held at the local American Legion Hall, with hundreds of people in attendance. Veterans, families, children from the schools the dogs had visited, and Frank's entire biker group filled the room. A decorated general stood at the podium and read the citation for each dog's service. As he spoke about their bravery, their sacrifices, and their continued service to their community, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "These three heroes remind us that service doesn't end when active duty does," the general said. "Even in retirement, even with their injuries, they continue to serve others. They are an inspiration to us all." Rex, Stella, and Bruno sat at attention. During the ceremony, their bearing still proud and military despite their disabilities. They wore special harnesses with their military decorations, finally being recognized for the heroes they had always been. After the ceremony, Frank approached Lisa with tears in his eyes. "You know, 6 months ago, I was making fun of these dogs. I thought they were worthless. I was wrong about everything." "We all were," Lisa replied, watching as children and veterans surrounded the three dogs, eager to meet the heroes. "We saw what we thought were problems that needed to be fixed. We didn't see the heroes who had already given everything." Harold, now fully recovered, brought Dorothy to meet the dogs properly. "You three saved my life," he told them, kneeling down to their level. "But more than that, you reminded all of us what real courage looks like." As Lisa watched the celebration around her, she realized that this story was bigger than just three dogs being recognized for their service. It was about how easy it is to overlook heroes, how quickly we judge based on appearances, and how important it is to look deeper. Rex, Stella, and Bruno had taught everyone a valuable lesson. Real strength doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from continuing to serve others, even when you're hurt, even when you're forgotten, even when the world sees you as broken. They had shown that heroes come in all forms, and sometimes the most unlikely-looking characters are the ones with the biggest hearts and the strongest spirits. The three dogs continued their work as therapy animals for years to come, touching thousands of lives and changing countless perspectives about what it means to be a hero. And Lisa? She never looked at a rescue animal the same way again, because she learned that you never know when you might be looking at a hero.